Have you ever died from an endless loop of reinforcements? What about trying to call in a stratagem? Blowing yourself up using the wrong aim mode? Or even lost a sample container too far from extraction to recover? My name's Redacted. By the end of this video, you'll know my top 10 changes to make to the default settings, all of which vastly improve your gameplay, make higher difficulties easier, and will even net you more samples at extraction. Before we get started, I'm doing two giveaways on the channel. The first one is for $10 to get a premium war bond or 1,000 super credits to the winner. To enter, subscribe and like this video. Leave a comment down below with your ship name. Whichever subscriber gets the most likes within the week that this video drops wins. I'll talk about the second $100 giveaway at the end of the video. Everybody knows how often you want to change settings like motion blur in almost every video game that comes out. But in Helldivers 2, the settings that you can change actually hold back your gameplay. The most egregious example of this is when you're cemented in place entering your stratagem command. This brings us to number 10. There's hundreds of ways to die in this game, and standing still doesn't help with any of them. If you don't have an MMO mouse, just change the stratagem keys to something you can use with your right hand. This gives you the ability to kite your enemies with your left hand and enter the command with your right. Doing this on the arrow keys takes a little bit to get used to, but I've done it both ways, with an MMO mouse and the arrow keys. Next up is number 9. Mouse smoothing and mouse acceleration. Both of these things are artificial changes that your computer and Windows try to do in order to change the direct input that comes from your hand. This interferes with the muscle memory that we develop as we play shooter games. You'll be familiar with this if you've played any other competitive shooter game, like Valorant. Just simply turn smoothing off and make sure acceleration is at 0. Next thing that we're going to talk about is something that comes down to personal preference. I've tried it both ways. At first, I didn't like the dynamic aim mode. I wanted to change immediately back, but I've been using it recently and I genuinely think that it's better now. The key takeaway for you to decide on your personal preference on this setting is whether or not you're willing to learn a little bit of muscle memory. Changing from first to third person eats up a keybind. Using dynamic aim mode gets rid of this problem by simply tapping or holding for which one you want. Next thing that we're going to talk about, if you don't already know it, you can hold R and look at the different functions of your weapon. There's a setting in the game that you can save, having the game remember what function you put it on. The railgun is the perfect example for this because it has unsafe and safe mode, as I'm sure you're aware of. RIP launch railgun. These settings combined completely change the way the railgun feels. You have to be able to see the screen on it in order to know that you're not going to blow yourself up with it. So being able to change intuitively between first and third person is extremely important. Also, if you die, you don't want to have to redeploy your railgun and change that setting every single time you do it. Usually you're going to have a preference and you're going to stick with it. The next setting that we'll talk about is switch weapon on pickup. If you've ever tried to recover a support weapon in the middle of a permanent horde only to pick up an empty gun and have to swap back to something with bullets, you'll know why. Or switch to a grenade launcher after you pick it up from a stratagem only to blow yourself up with it because you forgot that it switched. If you're blonde like me, it can definitely happen. The next item I'll cover is 2-in-1. The setting Mission Info Visibility interferes with sample visibility. This is what it's supposed to look like in the top right corner when this is enabled properly. In addition to this, you can also see the total number of samples on the entire map. This is the limit that you can find in the mission. There is not any variance in the number of samples that are in specific missions. Hopefully the developers will fix this weird interaction between these two settings, but for now, we want mission info visibility set to dynamic and sample count on visible. Keep in mind this sample count is for the entire lobby, not just your own. That gives us less of a problem of doing the mental math trying to figure out how many samples we lost when someone dies. Recovering their sample box is super important, especially if you're still on the material grind like I am. With that being said, you can intentionally drop sample containers in a safe spot or on extraction with the X key. Doing this can save you a long recovery trip. The next thing we're going to focus on is changing the way we use our map. Make sure that you press your map key after you stop sprinting in order to keep it up while you're running around. You can stare at the mini map like this and keep an eye out for blips of patrols just like this. In addition to this, we also want to make sure we don't have any keybind conflicts like the Steam overlay with Shift Tab. I changed my map key to the F key. This gives us extra awareness to avoid patrols that will spawn and spawn and spawn and spawn. Next up is the dive key. I use the spacebar, but keep in mind this is going to ruin the jump pack for you and you'll need a different keybind. One important distinction in the settings is the differentiation between long press, tap, hold, and all of the other options. For me personally, in any game that ever has a dodge, I always change it to spacebar. In order to do this, we're going to take advantage of the different ways the game detects input. I use hold spacebar to vault and climb, and then I use double tap to dodge. Lastly, making our reticle visible at all times is something that enables us to have 3 different fields of view and aiming modes: blind fire, third person, and ADS. Blind fire is really nice for when you're getting overwhelmed with Terminids. Having our reticle on just gives us accuracy while doing so. That wraps up my thought for the default settings that hold everyone back in this game. Thanks for watching, guys. If there's any criticism to the video, please let me know. It won't hurt my feelings and it'll help me on the next video. That's either going to be top tips or top things I want added to the game. Let me know which one you want me to do. As for the $100 giveaway, that will go to a lucky subscriber when I hit 1,000 subs. Be sure you're subscribed.